Hi, my name is Rick Reitz. I'm Director of Consulting Services at DMC. Today I'd like to introduce you to Office 365, tell you a little bit more about how you might want to get started if you've explored some of the features and you think you might be ready to move your business into the cloud. So I have a couple other videos I've done introducing you to Office 365, providing some overview of the different features within Office 365. There are also some demonstrations of Office 365, and this kind of concludes the video series by talking about your next steps and how to get started with Office 365. Kind of boiled this down to about 5 steps. First step, pick your plan family. They have a small business suite, a mid-size suite, and an enterprise suite. For most organizations, unless you're truly a startup and you're not quite sure if your business is going to survive very long, I probably would not recommend the small business suite. It's maxed out at 25 users, so you cannot add a 26th user. The mid-size suite could be appropriate for some businesses. It also has a hard limit. The top end limit is 300 users. You cannot add a 301st user. Couple other drawbacks is that IT support from Microsoft is only available during business hours. It's not 24/7. In addition, you cannot add additional storage. So there are some storage maximums that are included by default, and you cannot purchase any additional with the mid-size suite. So I typically do recommend most people choose the enterprise family. It has none of the limitations that I just mentioned. Once you've picked the family that's appropriate for you, recommend then that you pick the specific offerings that are going to be most appropriate for your business. You can choose each of the features in an a la carte fashion, and you just pay for what you actually need. But usually you'll get a price break if you choose one of the packages. I typically recommend either the E1 package, which will include Exchange, SharePoint, and Lync, all for $8 per user per month. Alternatively, you can choose the E3 package, which also throws in the full desktop version of the Office suite, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. Usually the E1 or the E3 is going to be the best deal, $8 or $20, but you can break down all the different components of the package and purchase them a la carte. Next step is to figure out how you're going to migrate to Office 365. So for email, usually you have to decide, do I need to convert my existing email? Perhaps you can just import existing email via Outlook into your new Office 365 account. There are some built-in tools, so if you already have Exchange Online, or Exchange on-premise, there are built-in tools to move all of your email for the entire organization into Office 365. Thirdly, there are third-party tools. I typically recommend MigrationWiz. That seems to be the best. It can handle a migration from Exchange or Google or pretty much any other email system that's out there. It can migrate all of your email boxes over to Office 365. Second thing to think about is authentication. Do you want to manage and have single sign-on capabilities? So that your on-premise and your Office 365 suite, people use the same ID and password. That is what's called federated IDs or Active Directory federated services. Step back from that would be just to sync your accounts. So when you add a new user to your Active Directory, that can automatically sync to Office 365. However, the passwords would be maintained by Microsoft on the Office 365 platform. People can change them at will, but the actual passwords are stored on their servers. The third option is have Microsoft manage the whole thing. That's actually the simplest option, and that's just having your own online ID. People can pick the exact same ID that they typically use to log onto your own network, and they can choose the exact same password as well. But it's not managed to synchronize between on-premise and the cloud, so they'll have to manage that separately. The third thing is, how are you going to manage your SharePoint migration? You may have documents on a network drive or on an on-premise SharePoint. You could actually use the drag and drop features of SharePoint 2013 and actually just drag files via your desktop into the cloud, and they'll automatically sync those files over. You could write scripts that will take certain documents or preserve a certain type of hierarchy you may have in place already and replicate that within SharePoint in the cloud. Thirdly, there are a number of third-party tools that you can purchase to do that. Typically, I don't recommend that you don't need a third-party tool unless you're talking about a ton of data. Usually, I'd say if you have 50 gigabytes or more, it's worth considering actually purchasing a third-party tool. Fourth step is to plan out some of the advanced features of your Office 365 platform. Usually, if you're going to have SharePoint Online as one of your components, you need to plan out the site taxonomy. How is the site content going to be organized? How are you going to navigate between the different sites within your intranet, as well as any project sites that you set up? Within each of those project sites and department sites, you need to pick the specific SharePoint features that you're going to utilize within those sites. You also can set permissions and decide which user groups are going to have full access, read-only access, or no access. And finally, plan out some of the workflows. If you're going to automate some business processes or use SharePoint workflows in which to manage those business processes, you may also choose to do some dashboarding and track some key performance indicators. So that would probably be the last step in trying to plan out your advanced features. And then finally, actually execute the process of purchasing your Office 365 subscriptions. As I mentioned, I do recommend the Enterprise Suite. There are a ton of a la carte options as well as bundles. And then they now also offer CRM Online, which is a tremendous value at only $44 per user per month. So again, start out, pick your plan family, pick the specific offerings, select your migration strategies, plan out the new features, and then go ahead and purchase your Office 365 subscription. Microsoft does offer a 30-day trial. We would be more than happy to set you up with that trial and get you started, give you a little taste for it before you buy. And of course, we're more than happy to help you with any migration activities, plan out your new Office 365 platform, and help you grow it to really maximize the benefit from it. If you have any questions, please contact DMC. Thank you.